can look like a blank canvas, but what if you could transform that uncertainty into an opportunity? That's what we're going to be talking about today in the context of career transitions. But for those who are watching me for the first time, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Leah Hadley. I am the founder of Great Lakes Investment Management and Great Lakes Divorce Financial Solutions. And my passion is really helping women to navigate the financial decisions that come with big life changes. So through money mentorship, financial planning, and strategic investment management services, we guide our clients to find their financial confidence. So let's talk about what we're talking about related to career transitions today. And just a little background, I will tell you that I have been through every kind of career transition. I have gone literally from one career to an entirely different career. I have lost a job and had to find a job. I have chosen to go out on my own and create my own business. And so personally, I have really experienced them all in different ways at different times in my life. And transition can be hard. It can be scary because there's so many unknowns, but we can make the financial transition a little bit easier when we have some clarity around initially your current financial situation. So that's the starting point, is getting very clear on what your current financial position is. What are your assets? What do you own? What are your liabilities? What do you owe? What is the income that is coming in? Where is it coming in from? When is it coming in? What are your expenses, your fixed expenses, those expenses that are the same month in and month out, or quarter in and quarter out? And what are your variable expenses, those expenses where you have a little bit more control or flexibility from month to month because they change month to month. So it really does start with getting clarity around your current financial position. Now, I acknowledge that some people are changing careers by choice, and some people, it's you found yourself in the situation and now you're trying to figure out the next step. And so some of this is really going to vary based on the circumstances under which you are making this transition. But if you are planning for the transition, I would really encourage you to create a budget specifically for your transition. You know exactly what your starting point is, right? But we want to look at realistically, what is the support that you need in order to make this transition? Could it be that you're going to need the support of a career coach? Could it be that you're going to need additional education? Could it be that you're relocating, right? Lots of different changes, lots of different experiences can occur to support you through this career transition. And you want to have a plan around how you are going to fund that transition, right? Now, again, I recognize that sometimes people have more runway to kind of plan this out, and sometimes people are caught off guard, they lose their job, but you still want to be realistic about how long it will take you to find your next position and what supports do you need in order to make that happen within that time frame, right? And so really developing a plan or a budget around that transition can be really beneficial, especially just in giving you peace of mind because you've thought it through. It's not like there's all these unknown expenses. You know what to plan for, and you've created a plan around it, right? Now, again, everybody's circumstances are different in terms of where they're finding themselves with this transition. But you do want to be really thoughtful and strategic when you're managing your savings in your emergency fund. Now, if you lost your job and you're like, oh my gosh, I lost my income, it was completely unplanned. Hopefully you're getting unemployment benefits or some kind of benefits from the company that you're no longer with. But that is what the emergency savings fund is for. It's for those things that we just cannot necessarily know are going to happen. And I know a lot of people are completely averse to pulling money from their emergency savings. But if you find yourself in a position where you have lost your income, you do have expenses that are coming up, and it was completely unplanned, that is a time to be really thinking about using your emergency savings fund. However, the other thing to keep in mind is if this wasn't a planned transition and you're kind of figuring things out day by day, that you're going to want to really conserve savings and make sure that you have a plan to make sure they're going to last through this time of limited income. All kinds of other emergencies can still arise that have nothing to do with your job or your career, and you want to make sure that you still have funds set aside for that. So that's really important to make sure that you are really thoughtful and intentional about how you use your savings, how you use your emergency funds through this career transition. The fourth tip is about really managing fluctuating income. When you change careers, your income can go down, it can go sideways, it can go up, it can go up and down, right? It can fluctuate. So, again, it depends on the nature of the specifics of your situation, what you anticipate relative to income. But sometimes people choose to take on, especially if they're taking some time off, maybe to reevaluate their career, they may take on a consulting role here or there, a project. There's a variety of things that people do. But if you are going to be seeing income fluctuations, if you are anticipating a reduction in income, you want to make sure that you're prepared for that. And that might mean taking a really hard look at your fixed expenses and potentially seeing where you can reduce your expenses if your income is coming down, right? Now, if your income is going up and down, it's fluctuating significantly, and that's not something that you're used to, you may find that you need to work with somebody on getting a clear spending plan in place so you can feel confident that how much you have to spend with the variability in income. That's very commonly challenging for a lot of folks, especially when they're transitioning from a consistent income to a more variable income situation. And so just keep in mind that, especially as financial planners, we work with folks who get paid in all kinds of ways. And so that's not something that is necessarily unusual in the work that we're doing, even though it may be catching you off guard. And so if you need support, don't hesitate to reach out, right? Also, keep in mind that your short term transitions don't have to completely derail your long term goals. If you are somebody who has been planning for your retirement, for example, you want to make sure that you're strategic in how you handle any of those old 401ks, 403bs, whatever kinds of retirement plans that you may have had with your former employer. So that way you're really optimizing your retirement investments and they're working for you to help you reach that retirement goal. The other thing, though, is to be really cautious that sometimes people find that during these transitions, they're tempted to pull out of their retirement savings. And, sometimes it's unavoidable, but it can be a very, very expensive way to access money, especially if you're subject to early withdrawal penalties. If you have significant income that year and you do have a higher marginal tax rate on the dollars coming out of those retirement assets. So it's something that you really want to be mindful of, not just in the short term and the tax consequences associated with it, but what does that actually mean for your future and what you've been planning for yourself? Changing careers, changing jobs doesn't have to completely derail your future if you're mindful about that. Other things to consider is if you've had a loan on your employer retirement account, it is really important to know what happens with that loan if you leave that employer. Now, every 401k plan has its own rules around it. So it's just important to check with your HR person, check with your plan provider, find out what are the rules and what happens if you leave that employer and you do still have a outstanding loan on your retirement plan. So that way you know exactly how to handle that going forward, right? Another thing that you want to be really clear on is your health insurance and other benefits. So if you are, planning a leave from an employer to some other transition, you want to know what are your options in terms of health insurance, especially if you're going to be out of work for a while. What happens to some of your other benefits? For example, if you've been contributing to a flexible spending account, do you need to make sure that you use up those funds in a specific period of time or lose them, which is very common? And so getting really clear on what that looks like for you, for your specific situation. So that way you're not losing additional dollars that just because you weren't aware, right? That becomes very important. But the other piece of it is when you are evaluating new job opportunities, you want to look at the whole package, not just the base salary, but what does the entire compensation package look like? What kinds of health benefits are available to you? What kinds of other benefits are available to you, right? It's interesting. A lot of times we're evaluating for clients whether they are going to leave the public sector or leave the public sector for the private sector or vice versa, right? That's a very common analysis that we do for folks. And a lot of times when people realize the value of the benefits that they receive in the public sector, and we calculate what the equivalent income would be in the private sector, they're really surprised, right? But it goes both ways. And so sometimes people don't realize that when they're leaving the private sector and entering the public sector, sometimes even though the base salary may be lower, the full compensation package may actually be a lot higher. So really making sure that you understand and evaluate the opportunities that are available to you as you're making this transition. And again, not just from that short-term perspective, which obviously, we're always very focused on what's the financial situation today. But you also really want to consider, how is this transition going to make a change for my long-term planning goals? So I'll give you another example. A lot of times we work with clients on deciding whether or not they want to invest in additional education and looking at what is their compensation now. If they invest in additional education, what is that investment? What does that look like? Where are the funds going to come from? All of that. But what is that going to mean for their future earnings opportunities, right? So all of these things are things that we're evaluating as we help our clients work through these career transitions. If you have questions about any of this, really want to encourage you to reach out to us. We have 2 checklists available that may really be very helpful for some of you who are currently in the middle of a job change. One is for those who have recently lost their job. It's just a checklist of things that you want to consider. The other is for those who are starting a new job, things to consider as you're evaluating benefits and all of that. If either of those checklists would be helpful for you, I just want to encourage you, send me a private message. I'm happy to send those over to you. I know that going through any kind of big life change can feel overwhelming, but career changes in particular can be really empowering and you're setting yourself up for a really solid financial future going forward. So if just kind of figuring out the finances of that transition feels stressful or overwhelming, reach out. Let's work through those numbers together. So that way you can go through that transition with confidence, get to that next level, get to where you want to be, and really embrace that change so that you can be in control of your financial future.